Theory 1. Courage is Cerberus, the guardian of hell. This theory genuinely messes with my brain, because this isn't just some random fan theory, it actually has a connection to real mythology. Yeah, you heard that right, mythology. The theory says that Courage is actually Cerberus, the legendary three-headed guardian dog of hell, and Nowhere is actually hell itself, a barren, hellish wasteland. And Courage protects that house to keep mankind, meaning Muriel, safe. Now listen carefully to this. In Greek mythology, Cerberus was the dog that guarded the underworld. He made sure that living people couldn't enter the underworld, and dead souls couldn't escape from it. Now look at Courage. He's a dog who literally lives in an isolated, barren wasteland where supernatural creatures constantly appear. He stops them. He protects Muriel. He guards the house. And notice this too. Multiple times in the show, Courage is shown with more than one face or head whenever he expresses extreme emotions or warning messages. Exactly like Cerberus having 3 heads. Now, coincidence or deliberate? I don't know, but listen to this. Nowhere is basically a barren, hellish wasteland, which perfectly matches the descriptions of the Greek underworld. No real civilization, no normal society, just isolation, darkness, and supernatural threats. And yeah, talking about Muriel and Eustace, the theory says they are souls who somehow ended up in this underworld. And Courage, Cerberus, protects them, keeps them safe, pushes supernatural threats away. Courage is basically a mythological creature that chose humanity over duty. What do you think about this theory? Definitely tell me in the comments because honestly, this is one of my favorites. There's a lot of fantasy in it, but from here, the theories are only going to get darker. Theory 2. The Freaky Fred Theory. Familiar danger. Now comes a character that very few people talk about, but honestly, he was probably the most psychologically disturbing character in the entire show. Freaky Fred, Muriel's nephew. A person who looked completely normal, but trust me, he was not normal. I'll tell you this, when I first saw him, he literally appeared in my dreams that same night. Like, there's something deeply uncanny about his design itself. And yeah, Fred's episode felt completely different from the rest of the show. He wasn't an alien. He wasn't a monster. There was no supernatural element at all. He was just a human being who felt slightly off. And the moment you looked at him, you felt something that you couldn't even put into words. And because of that, people came up with a theory that Fred was deliberately written to represent a very specific type of dangerous person. Someone who appears normal, familiar, polite, but is actually unsafe. Now technically, the show never directly said this. They just showed Fred and allowed viewers to feel uncomfortable on their own. And viewers did feel it. That strange, uncomfortable, I can't explain it but something feels wrong feeling. That was actually the important lesson. The show was teaching us that danger is not always obvious. Danger doesn't always come looking like a monster. Sometimes danger can look polite, well-dressed, soft-spoken, even familiar. And for kids watching the show, that was actually a very important message. Trust your gut feeling. Even if the person looks normal, even if they're a family member. And honestly, even today, if I rewatch Fred's episode, it still makes me uncomfortable. Because he wasn't a monster. He was a human. And sometimes humans are scarier than monsters. Believe me. Theory 3. The show is based on a real couple's true story. Now this theory is different from all the others, because this isn't just a fan theory. It supposedly has an actual real-world connection. Yeah, you heard that right, a real-world connection. The theory says that Courage the Cowardly Dog was actually inspired by the true story of a real elderly couple and their dog. According to the story, there was a real farmhouse in New Mexico, one that looked eerily similar to the farmhouse from the show, where an old husband and wife used to live, and they reportedly experienced a lot of strange incidents. Then one day, they suddenly vanished, leaving only their dog behind. And when you look at this farmhouse in New Mexico, it genuinely resembles the one from the show. Isolated, surrounded by barren land, literally in the middle of nowhere. Now this theory has never been 100% confirmed. The creators of the show never officially said anything about it. But the similarities, elderly couple, isolated farmhouse, strange incidents, a lonely dog, are so oddly specific that it becomes hard to completely dismiss. And if this theory is true, then the show wasn't just a cartoon. It was a fictionalized version of a real mystery. But I know. Right now your brain is probably asking the same question. Then what happened to the real couple? Where did they go? Why was the dog left alone? Because the moment people hear stories like this, curiosity instantly takes over. But here's the sad part. We may never actually get the answer to those questions. Not in the show, and maybe not even in real life. And that's exactly what makes this theory so unsettling. The other theories feel like imagination, but this one could potentially be real. A real dog, a real farmhouse, a real mystery. And all this time, we were watching it on Saturday mornings thinking it was just another cartoon. Theory 4. Eustace's behavior is generational trauma. Okay, now let's get a little serious. But first, let's talk about Eustace for a second. Eustace Bagg, the man, the myth. The guy who looked like he had never genuinely enjoyed a single moment in his entire life. And honestly, I still don't understand how someone like him ended up marrying someone as sweet as Muriel. Like seriously, have you ever thought about that? But anyway, moving forward. What was the one thing Eustace always said to Courage? Stupid dog. Every single episode, every situation. No matter what happened, even when Courage literally saved everyone, this man still called him that. But here's the thing, it wasn't really just a joke. Because fans started noticing that Eustace's behavior toward Courage followed a very specific emotional pattern. He almost never acknowledged Courage's achievements, never appreciated him properly. And the theory says that this was completely intentional from the writers, to represent a very real emotional cycle that exists in the real world. But the most interesting part is this. Eustace himself was also a victim of his childhood. The show briefly reveals that Eustace's own mother treated him in a very similar way. The same dismissal, the same stupid energy, the same emotional coldness and unavailability. Eustace never really learned how to express love properly, because he himself never truly received it. So he repeated the same behavior he grew up watching. This wasn't necessarily pure evil, it was learned behavior. It was generational trauma.
Theory 5. Muriel and Eustace had a son who died.
Okay, this theory is the one that genuinely leaves me speechless. No, not speechless in the video. Otherwise, who's gonna explain the theory to you? But seriously, this theory is so emotionally heavy that it actually takes time to process. The theory says that Muriel and Eustace once had a son, a baby boy, but for some reason, they lost him. Most fans believe that the child was taken by the Cajun fox, and after that loss, Muriel adopted Courage to fill the emptiness left behind. But this is where Eustace's angle comes in, and this is what makes the entire theory absolutely devastating. Eustace never truly moved on from losing his son, and all the pain and anger from that loss, he unknowingly took it out on Courage. And yeah, it's unfair, but human nature is often like that. Sometimes people throw their pain onto the wrong person. And now, think about this for a second. What if stupid dog wasn't just cruelty? What if it was grief? Every time Eustace looked at Courage, maybe he was reminded of the son he lost. The son who wasn't there anymore. The son who was never coming back. And Muriel? Maybe she saw in Courage everything she had lost. That's why she loved him so unconditionally. That's why "my dear" came out so naturally every single time. Because deep down, maybe those emotions originally belonged to someone else. And you know what makes this even sadder? Muriel's love was still real, no matter where it came from. And Eustace? He wasn't a villain. He was a broken man drowning in grief, and he never found his way back out. That's heartbreaking. Number 6. Courage is trapped inside an animal shelter. Okay, wait. Hold on for a second. Because this theory, this is honestly the one that hits me the hardest, personally and emotionally. So listen carefully. For the entire show, we believed that Courage lived in a farmhouse in nowhere, Kansas, with Muriel and Eustace. But what if none of that was actually real? Because according to this theory, Courage was never really living in a farmhouse at all. He's actually trapped inside an animal shelter, inside a cage, alone. The theory says Courage really was an abandoned stray dog, just like the show tells us. But after that, everything else is simply his imagination. Nobody named Muriel ever adopted him. Instead, animal shelter workers picked him up, and Courage mentally escaped into a fantasy because of the trauma. A tiny cage, no family, no home, no one. And nowhere, the place in the show that feels so isolated, so empty, so endless, is actually a metaphor for loneliness. It represents how Courage feels inside. He feels like he belongs nowhere. And Muriel? Muriel is Courage's dream, a loving grandmother figure who calls him "my dear," who hugs him, who accepts him unconditionally. Everything an abandoned dog could ever wish for. A safe human, a warm home, a family. Courage created all of that inside his imagination. And honestly, this theory genuinely makes me emotional on a personal level. Because if this theory were true, then our beloved Courage was never actually safe at all. And yeah, talking about the monsters, the theory says those monsters are representations of real fears inside the shelter. Fear of euthanasia, fear of abandonment, fear of spending an entire life trapped in a cage. Courage's brain simply transformed those fears into elaborate supernatural monsters. And Eustace? He represents the people who see Courage as unwanted, people who don't understand his value, people who treat him like nothing more than a stupid dog. And the reason this theory is so powerful is because it explains almost everything about the show.
Why nowhere feels so isolated? Why the monsters are so bizarre? Why Muriel feels so perfectly loving, almost unrealistically loving? Because maybe she isn't real. Maybe she's just the dream of an abandoned dog. And honestly, I'm not even joking, this theory almost brings tears to my eyes. Like seriously, just imagine for 1 second that real shelter dogs might actually dream about lives like this. Imagine how painful their real lives must feel. I genuinely can't even think about it too much. Anyway guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, then please subscribe to the channel, and definitely tell me in the comments what topic you want the next video on.